1. Different person, same relationship. Why do some people repeatedly end up in the same painful relationship, even when they genuinely believe they are choosing someone completely different? The names change, the faces change, and the circumstances may look new. One person is quiet and emotionally distant, another is intense and controlling, and a third appears caring at first, but gradually becomes critical or unreliable. Yet after enough time, the emotional experience begins to feel familiar. You are once again trying to earn reassurance, explain your needs, understand mixed signals, or convince someone to treat you with basic consistency. When the relationship ends, you may blame yourself for missing the signs. You promise that next time you will choose more carefully. You may even create a detailed list of qualities you want to avoid. But months or years later, you realize that the new relationship has placed you in almost the same emotional position as the previous one. Carl Jung believed that repeated patterns like these are rarely explained by bad luck alone. The conscious mind may want stability, respect, and emotional safety, while the unconscious is drawn toward what it already recognizes. This does not mean that you secretly want to be hurt. 2. Familiarity can be mistaken for compatibility. People often assume that attraction naturally guides them toward what is good for them. In reality, attraction can also guide them toward what feels emotionally familiar. If closeness in childhood was warm, dependable, and safe, consistency may feel natural in adult relationships. But if attention was unpredictable, affection had to be earned, or conflict was followed by sudden warmth, emotional instability may later feel strangely recognizable. You may not consciously remember learning that love requires effort, anxiety, or constant adjustment. Yet your expectations can still be shaped by those experiences. You may become especially interested in people whose attention is difficult to secure because winning them over recreates a familiar emotional task. This is why an emotionally available person can sometimes feel less exciting than an inconsistent one. The available person responds clearly, follows through, and makes their interest easy to understand. There is no mystery to solve, and no approval to win back. If your nervous system is used to uncertainty. 3. Jung's idea of the complex. Jung used the word complex to describe an emotionally charged pattern within the personality. A complex forms around repeated experiences involving love, rejection, shame, fear, control, or abandonment, and it can influence behavior without being fully conscious. For example, someone with a strong abandonment complex may react intensely to small signs of distance. A delayed reply is not experienced as a simple delay. It activates the fear that the relationship is disappearing. A minor disagreement may feel like the beginning of rejection, even when the other person has given no indication that they intend to leave. Another person may carry a complex related to control. Perhaps they grew up in an environment where they had little influence over what happened around them. As an adult, they may repeatedly enter relationships in which control becomes the central struggle. They are drawn to dominant people, resist them, and then spend the relationship trying to recover a sense of power. A complex does not only preserve old feelings, it shapes perception. It influences which qualities attract you, which warning signs you minimize, and which behaviors feel emotional. 4. The attempt to repair the past. One of the strongest reasons people repeat painful relationships is that part of them is trying to create a different ending to an old experience. Suppose a parent was emotionally distant, highly critical, or difficult to please. As an adult, you may feel especially drawn to people who are similarly unavailable. Consciously, this seems irrational. Why choose someone who recreates the same frustration? The answer may be that the relationship offers an unconscious opportunity to repair the original wound. If this distant person finally chooses you, values you, or becomes emotionally available because of your patience, then the old rejection seems as though it has been corrected. The present relationship becomes connected to a much older question about your worth. This is why leaving can feel disproportionately difficult. You are not only letting go of the current person, you may also be giving up the hope that this time the unavailable person will change and prove that you were always worthy of being chosen. Unfortunately, a new relationship cannot rewrite the past in the way the unconscious hopes. It usually repeats the wound rather than repairing it. The more you try to earn from the new person what someone else failed to give you, the more authority the old pattern gains over your present life. Healing begins when you stop using another person's approval as ever. 5. Projection and the attraction to potential. Jung believed that people frequently project parts of themselves onto others. In relationships, projection can make someone appear more extraordinary, compatible, or emotionally significant than their actual behavior justifies. You may meet someone and quickly experience them as unusually deep, powerful, creative, confident, or mysterious. Yet some of what attracts you may come from qualities and possibilities that you have placed onto them rather than qualities they have consistently demonstrated. The person may represent a part of life you feel disconnected from. They may seem freer, more confident, more spontaneous, or less restricted by other people's opinions. Your attraction is not only directed toward them, it is also directed toward what they symbolize. Projection becomes especially powerful when the person is emotionally distant or difficult to know. Because there is limited information, your imagination has more room to complete the picture. Silence becomes depth. Inconsistency becomes complexity. Avoidance becomes hidden vulnerability. You begin relating to the person they could become rather than the person they repeatedly show themselves to be. This is how people become attached to potential. They imagine that the relationship will become healthy. 6. Why red flags can feel attractive. Red flags are often easy to recognize only after the relationship is over. In the beginning, the same behavior can look flattering, intense, or unusually romantic. A jealous person may appear deeply invested because they react strongly to anyone who receives your attention. Someone controlling may describe their behavior as concern, saying they only want to protect you or help you avoid bad decisions. A person who becomes emotionally intense very quickly can create the impression that the connection is rare and profound, even though neither person knows the other well enough for that level of certainty. Love bombing works in a similar way. Constant communication, dramatic promises, immediate plans for the future, and overwhelming attention can feel like proof that you have finally met someone who is completely sure about you. What makes the experience powerful is not only the amount of attention, but the speed. The relationship becomes emotionally important before there has been enough time to evaluate the person. 7. The role you keep repeating. Repeated toxic relationships are not only about choosing the same type of person, they often involve repeatedly taking the same role. You may become the rescuer. You are drawn to chaotic, wounded, or emotionally unavailable people because helping them gives you a sense of purpose. Their dependence makes you feel valuable, and their problems keep the focus away from your own emotional needs. You may become the pursuer. The more distant the other person becomes, the harder you work. You send longer messages, offer more reassurance, and take increasing responsibility for repairing the connection. You may become the interpreter. You explain the other person's behavior to yourself and to everyone around you. They are not cruel. They are afraid. They are not controlling. They have been hurt before. They do not ignore your needs. They simply struggle to communicate. Understanding someone's history can be compassionate, but understanding can also become a way of avoiding the reality of how they behave in the present. A difficult childhood may explain harmful behavior, but it does not make that behavior harmless. Jung's approach would not only ask why the other person behaves this way, it would ask why this particular role feels necessary to you. What do you 8. Why healthy relationships can feel unfamiliar. When someone is accustomed to emotional instability, they may overlook people who offer the opposite. A stable person communicates directly. Their behavior is relatively consistent, and their interest does not depend on keeping you anxious. There is less confusion, but there is also less emotional urgency. There is nothing to decode, no affection to win back, and no crisis that makes you feel essential. For someone who has spent years associating love with effort and uncertainty, this can feel strangely empty. A peaceful relationship also requires a different set of skills. You have to express your needs directly, rather than hoping the other person will sense them. You have to tolerate ordinary disappointment without turning it into a test of love. You have to allow intimacy to develop gradually, rather than treating immediate intensity as proof of compatibility. You also have to be willing to be seen. In a toxic relationship, much of your attention is focused on the other person's behavior. You are busy analyzing, rescuing, waiting, convincing, or recovering from the latest conflict. 9. How to recognize and interrupt the pattern. Breaking. The pattern begins with observation rather than self-blame. You are not responsible for another person's dishonesty, manipulation, or cruelty. However, you do need to understand what repeatedly keeps you involved after the pattern becomes visible. Begin by comparing your relationships rather than viewing each one as an isolated story. Ask what attracted you at the beginning. Notice which behaviors made you uncomfortable, but were quickly explained away. Identify the point at which you began investing more effort than the other person. Then examine the feeling that kept you involved. Was it hope that the person would return to how they behaved at the beginning? Was it guilt about leaving someone who appeared wounded? Was it fear that no one else would create the same level of attraction? Were you trying to prove that you could finally make an unavailable person choose you? Pay attention to what you call chemistry. Does your attraction increase when someone becomes distant? Does uncertainty make you more interested? Do consistent people seem unexciting, while unpredictable people feel magnetic? These questions are not intended to eliminate 10. Jung's final lesson. The repeated appearance of the same toxic relationship does not necessarily mean that the world contains only manipulative or emotionally unavailable people. It may mean that an unconscious pattern is influencing your choices before your conscious mind understands what is happening. You may believe you are choosing a person while also choosing a familiar emotional role. You may believe you are pursuing love while pursuing the chance to repair an old rejection. You may believe you are attracted to mystery while actually being activated by inconsistency. Jung's warning was that what remains unconscious continues to shape our lives while appearing to come entirely from the outside. The purpose of recognizing the pattern is not to blame yourself for people who have hurt you. The purpose is to understand why certain people feel immediately familiar, why certain behavior becomes difficult to leave, and why emotional chaos can feel more convincing than peace. Once the pattern becomes conscious, attraction does not disappear, but it loses some of its authority. You become better able to distinguish what you feel from what the person has actually shown you. You begin evaluating behavior rather than potential. You stop treating emotional intensity as evidence of compatibility. You stop believing that enough patience can transform someone who has shown no willingness to change. Eventually, the healthier person may not feel like the people who attracted you before. The relationship may develop more slowly and contain fewer dramatic highs and lows. At first, that difference may feel unfamiliar. It may also be the clearest sign that you are no longer choosing the same relationship with a different face.